Hello crafty friends, this is Jen and thank you for joining me today. Today I have a fun card for you where we're going to make pumpkins using Karen Burniston's Oval Crosshatch die set to add to her twist flower pop-up. So first of all, I die cut 3 ovals using a 110-pound heavyweight smooth white cardstock. And I'm just gluing these together to form the shape of the pumpkin. And I'm just wiping away some of the little bits of glue excess. Unfortunately, you can see a little bit of that when I start coloring, but it adds to the detail of the pumpkin. So we're going to start on the right side of the pumpkin, and I'm going in with YR09, and we're just adding the shadow to the pumpkin that we're creating. And I'm just adding some brush strokes, going around where I think the shadow would be and up the edge. And now I'm going to go in with YR04 and I'm going to blend those two together. And this will be the mid-range tone or mid-range color of our pumpkin. And again, I'm just blending these two together. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just try your best to blend them as best you can. And you don't have to use these colors. You could make green pumpkins, or you could add different color oranges, like orange Copic colors, or pencil crayons if you prefer to use those. Also for this, I do make 3 pumpkins for this card, but I'm only showing how I colored one because I literally did the same steps for the other 2 pumpkins. And again, just continuing to blend. And you can see I have a little spot there where the glue got on my fingers. Now I'm going in with Y38 and I'm blending this all together now. I really like using the honey color. It just, it's like the perfect yellow for creating a pumpkin. Okay, so now that I have that all blended together, I need to make a stem for the pumpkin. I tried to think of a die that I could use to do this, and then I was just like, you know what, I'll just draw it. So I have a piece of scrap brown cardstock, and that's Lawn Fawn's ground coffee cardstock. It's my favorite dark brown cardstock. And I just drew a stem, and I'm just trimming that out with my little craft scissors. And I'm going to add that to the top of the pumpkin. But first I'm going to erase the lines that I have on there. I'm just going to add a little dab of glue. And the glue that I use to do this is Lineco Neutral pH Adhesive. And I use a fine tip bottle, both which you can get from KarenBurniston.com. So I wanted to add a little like curly vine. So I used the big birthday charms from Karen Burniston to cut out it's kind of like a banner or confetti, and I die cut 3 of these, and I'm going to use Copic colors G29, G07, and YG25 to color in these little, what are now going to be like the little curly vines that you see on pumpkins. And I'm just going around adding color to where there should be like shadow and mid-tone, trying to leave enough space for the lighter color. And then going in with the lighter color and blending that all together. And I did the same thing for all 3 of the little curly vines that I made. Now I am gluing these onto the pumpkin. but we do end up having to change that around. I also die cut 3 leaves, and these leaves come with the twist flower pop-up. And I am going to color them with the same Copic colors as I did the little curly vines. And I die cut 3 of these, and I'll be using them for each pumpkin. So I'm just going up the spine of the leaf and where you see all the little indents with the G29. And then I'm going to blend that slightly with the G07. And then I'll go in with the YG25 to add a lighter color to the edges of the leaf. This is my favorite green color combination. Really like that YG25. So now you can see how that's going to look. I have all 3 of my pumpkins done and all 3 of my leaves and little curly bits and everything. So I die cut a piece of cardstock 7 inches by 8.5 inches to make a slim line, and then scored it down the middle at 3.5. Now to use the twist flower pop-up, you don't necessarily have to use a slimline card base. You could do a A2 size card base and then just do 1 pop out, or any other kind of card base. But I wanted to do a slimline because I don't really do those a whole lot, but I really love slimline cards. You can fit so much stuff on them. So here I'm adding some pretty pattern paper that I purchased from Echo Park, and it's an autumn kind of cardstock, or I'm sorry, pattern paper. And I have this huge stash over the years that I just keep accumulating more and more pattern paper as I see it. Oh, that looks good, I'll use that. But other products that I use will be listed in the comments below. And I'm just making sure that I can still fold the card, that I kept it even and didn't go over the edge. And this is a really neat technique to add paper to your cards, is folding down the double-sided adhesive part way, placing it in the card, and then removing the rest of the backing once you have it placed where you want it. And then this way, if you need to move it, you can still move that pattern paper around. It's not completely stuck. So here are the mechanisms for the twist flower pop-up. And in order to fit 3 of them in, I need to make marks at the 1 inch from the top line, 4.5 inches from the bottom. And I'm just making little pencil lines here. And then the last one at 1 3/4. So for the top and the bottom pop-up mechanism, I will be folding them as the instructions show. But for the middle one, because we want it to tilt a different direction, I will be folding it, but then I'll be using it backwards. So, or upside down. So here I'm just showing how I'm folding these. This paper is kind of thick, so I just wanted to make sure that I'm getting a good crease. So I use my bone folder to make sure that that's really well folded. And I'm just folding all of the fold lines, including the tab at the end. And then I'm just going to press that down how it would work in the card. And now I'm just going to do the same thing with the next fold, or next mechanism. And I just use my thumbnail to get in there and make sure that I stay on the line. It just kind of helps. And then going over it with the bone folder again. This is a really neat pop-up. It's not one that I use very often. I try and use ones like, I try and come up with card ideas with pop-ups that I haven't used in a while. Just to keep things, you know, oh, remember this one? Sometimes I have so many of them now that I don't remember all the ones I have. So I like to go through and think, okay, what haven't I used in a long time? Oh yeah, you know, this would be good. So for this one, I'm making all the regular folds, but when I go to use it, I'm going to turn it around. And you can tell which is the front, which is the back, especially if you have a cutting plate like I do, which looks like it's been through the war. So I'm going to push it down, but then I'm going to turn it around, and I have reversed it so that it's the rough side is on top instead of the smooth cardstock side. So I'm just lining up the little hole in the middle with my little pencil mark, and I'm butting that up against the crease line or the fold line of my card. And just trying to keep that straight. And another tip is I also use the center fold line to line it up with the fold of the card. And you can lift the side of the card up just to make sure that you get good placement and that it's in there correctly. And if you really want to see a good way of using this die, Karen has a video on her YouTube channel that you can watch to see how to put this together in a little more detail. So I'm just using my tweezers to hold that in place while that glue sets. And while that glue sets, I'm going to add the bottom pop-up piece. Again, just finding my pencil line, making sure that I'm just gluing that one little area, and then pushing that down and holding it in place. And then again, I'm just making sure too that I'm butting that up against the side of the card so that it's got good placement. And then pressing that down so it sets. And then you just fold the arms up, add a little dab of glue on the tab, and then put them together. And I'll just let that bottom one set. So I'm going to add the center pop-up mechanism. And I'm just centering that just like the other two. And then adding glue to the two tabs. And I'm just making sure that that's up against the center of my card properly. And then adding glue to the other side and pressing that down. For the center one, I didn't let it sit long enough. So it popped up a little bit. So I had to hold it down a little bit longer. And then just using my tweezers to hold that centerpiece in place. And there we have our 3 pop-up mechanisms in our card, and I'm just carefully closing it to make sure that, I have them in working order. And as you can see, 2 turn one way and the middle one turns to the right. So now I can add my pumpkins. So this is where I discovered that when I made my mock-up, I didn't add the stem and the swirly bit to the top. So I didn't, even though I had good placement, I didn't take into account the stem and the little curly bit on the top. So here what I'm doing is just moving it into a place where I can fold the card closed, and that piece will, when you close the card, you don't see anything popping out the side. And this is where I realized that I needed to move the curly bit onto the actual pumpkin so that when you close the card, you won't see the little vine or the stem sticking out of the side. So if you decided to do this, just make sure that, this is a step that you look at, maneuvering this in and out of the card to make sure that when you close it, it stays in the card and doesn't nothing comes over the side so that, you know, it kind of hides the surprise of the inside of the card. So here I'm just trying to figure out where to glue down the leaf. And to do this, I just, to add the pumpkin and reposition it, I'm using a repositionable tape runner. And it's, I just love this tape runner. It's so great. So for the center pumpkin, I realized that this one I'm going to have to just remove, and I'm going to have to add it somewhere else later on. So I'm trying to figure out where to put it that's not going to stick out. But because of the way that it closes, this one was kind of difficult to figure out where to put. So it's a lot of opening and closing, and just, you know, slightly maneuvering the card here and there. And then I realized, you know, I'm going to need to trim the stem a little more. And in fact, I just took the whole stem off and then just re-glued it on an angle so it wouldn't stick out as much, but I still had to trim it. And then now I can figure out where to add the vine. Still stuck out. I think I was cursing at this point. So I'm just adding the repositionable tape, and then forgot I didn't glue that one down. So make sure that you glue them once you get them into the proper position. Now that's glued in place, and we're good to go for the last pumpkin. And again, I'm just moving that little curly bit down to glue it right onto the actual pumpkin. And then I'm going to trim the stem. And sometimes I think that this is the fun part about crafting is, you know, don't give up. There's been a few times where I'm like, oh, I just can't get it. And I gave up, and I wish I hadn't. So don't give up. Just keep going. You'll get it. So for here, I'm just trying to figure out where to put the leaves so that when I close the card, they don't stick out. This bottom one was a bit of a struggle. So I trimmed off the stem. And I thought, oh, you know, in the card that Karen used for the packaging of this die set, she added a leaf onto that back edge. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. That would be perfect for this. And that's what I did. So I just glued that onto the back edge of the pop-up mechanism at the bottom. I'm just placing that in place, double checking everything's in order. And there we go. We have all our pumpkins placed onto the card. So I didn't want to just leave it blank. I wanted to add some decorator pieces. And I thought, you know, the pattern paper on the other side of this piece of pattern paper that I used was so pretty. So, and it had that nice greeny blue that I used for the background in the flowers. So I thought, well, this would match perfectly. So I cut 2 1-inch strips to go up either side of my card base. So these are 1 inch by 8 3/8. And I'm just adding those to each side of my card, just to give it a little bit something extra. And I'll place that second strip down. And now I need to have a place for, to add a sentiment. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to add the sentiment onto the pumpkins. And for these sentiments, I used the Word Set 7 Autumn and Word Set 18 connectors. And I'm adding Happy Fall to You. And I just die cut this from the same dark brown cardstock to keep everything kind of the same theme. To do this, I just have to pop out the little bits that got left when I die cut this. And I'm just adding a little bit of glue to the background, or to the back, to the back of these die cuts. and then adding them to my pumpkin pieces. Burniston has pumpkin dies, but they're very small. They're like with the charms and the different Halloween elements and stuff like that. So I wanted larger pumpkins. And so I thought, how can I do that? Use her ovals. You could also make different shapes, different shaped pumpkins as well using the circles. You could do more rounder ones. So now that my sentiments are on the pumpkins, I need a place to sign the card. So I debated what to do. I thought about maybe using the like different shaped dies, and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna stick with the ovals for the inside. So I'm just adding a piece of white cardstock, and I use the Crosshatch oval for this one, and just adding it to a regular dark brown oval that's just the next size up. And I'm just trying to figure out, if I place it on the right side, is it going to create a catch point on those pumpkins? But it didn't, so it worked out perfect. And I'm just giving that a good press and then double checking that it's not going to catch on my my pumpkins on the inside. So now I need to work on the front of my card. And for this, I only had a little bit of that pattern paper left. So what I decided to do was take that other 1-inch strip, and I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to add it to either half of the wider strip that I had left. And here I'm running my X-Acto knife, and then went completely crooked, realized halfway down, flipped it around, and then I ended up having to tuck those jagged edges that aren't straight underneath that last little bit of pattern paper. But it actually worked out pretty good. So I'm just making sure that, you know, I'm not going to go over, that there is enough room. Now I'm going to add a line of glue up one side, and I did hide the jagged side. And I'm just going about 1/8 of an inch overlap on that flowered pattern paper side. And I'm doing the same to the other side as well. And then once that's all pressed down, then I can add it to my card front. And for this, instead of using double-sided adhesive, I decided to go with glue because I wanted to be able to move it around if I needed to. So I'm just placing that down, making sure that I have the same distance of brown cardstock on both sides, and pressing that in place. So for the front of the card, I wanted to add a stamp sentiment. At this time, Burniston doesn't have a autumn or fall stamp sentiment yet, hopefully in the future. And I also wanted to add some more pumpkins, and I was going to go with ovals again, but the circles worked better. So for this one, I used the Halloween borders and the circles crosshatch. Now for the Halloween borders, I die cut one border with just the pumpkins using smooth white cardstock, and then I cut them in half. So there's 5 pumpkins on each side. And I used a stamp sentiment that I got from Spellbinders, and that one is called Fall Greetings. And I thought their Hey There Pumpkin sentiment was perfect. And I'm using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink and just inking that up. I think I had to do it like 3 times, so that it was black enough that, you know, it stood out. And then I'm going to add that sentiment circle to my brown circle. And for the brown circle, I chose to do the crosshatch circle for this one. Now I'm going to color my pumpkins, and I'm going to use the same colors that I used on the pumpkins that are on the inside of the card. And I'm just going over with the YR09 and then the YR04 and just blending those together. And then the Y38 to finish that off. Now I do speed it up here because I basically just do the same thing over and over and for the pumpkin border. There is another piece in the Halloween borders when you use the pumpkin border to make a jack-o'-lantern face. But because this wasn't a Halloween card, I didn't want to use that, so I just used the pumpkins. And I'm just doing the same thing for each pumpkin. Going over, blending it together. And like I said before, you could create different colored pumpkins. You could do orange and then green and then white. And I actually grew pumpkins in my garden this year, and I have 7 pumpkins ready to come off the vine for Halloween. So it's kind of neat to have your own pumpkin patch in the back, but it definitely took over most of my backyard. So I'm going to add these to the top and the bottom of my little circle sentiment there. And the really cool part about her border dies is that you can usually bend them to go around something. Whether it be the bones, whether it be the Christmas ones. I love the border dies. They're so great. I highly recommend getting them for sure. And she has them for almost every holiday that I can think of. Easter, Halloween, Christmas. Okay, so we've colored those pumpkins, and I just added a dark green to the stems of those pumpkins. And then I'm just bending these so that they will fit on the bottom of the circle die. Or the circle die cut that we cut out for the sentiment. And I'm just pressing those in place. And then I'm going to add that to the front of my card. And there we have our finished card. And I think this is such a cute idea to create your own pumpkins. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great day. See you next time.